Hello to everyone viewing this video as a part of Conway ArtsFest. My name is Dr. Trina Harlow and I am new faculty at the University of Central Arkansas. I'm very excited to be in Conway. I moved here this summer and my dad grew up in Arkansas, so it's really special for me to be back here in Arkansas where I have lots of family. I'm an assistant professor of art education at the University of Central Arkansas. What that means is that I teach future art teachers. Today I have another video for you on how to make birds. And this project I call Big Birds. They are definitely big and colorful, and they're just made out of cardboard. So I'm going to show you how to make this lovely big bird. Before we get started, boys and girls, we have to cut out the shapes for our bird's body. I've already done that. It's really loud when you film that. So I'll just show you. I cut out what I'll call a big eye shape, like the eye on your face, and it's big. It's almost as big as my chest. And I cut out what is going to be a wing. And I'll say it's like a small eye. It's much smaller than the one. See how much smaller it is? And then I cut out a face for my bird. And the way I did that was I cut a shape like this, which is sort of an eye shape, as in eye and your eyeball. And then I just cut a point off one end, and then I just cut down a little, making a beak. But you could just cut 3 shapes like this, one big one and 2 that are much smaller, and you could make your bird out of that. Also, you need 2 legs, and they're about 1 inch wide and they're pretty long. And then we need some feathers. And notice it's narrower at the bottom than it is up at the top. And I would cut 3 to 5 of these. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to have some fun painting. And we're going to paint straight lines and curved lines and zigzag lines and dotted lines. And then we're going to paint some shapes like circles and squares and triangles, all kinds of lines and shapes. I would just turn on your favorite cartoon or some music and just have fun painting. Or maybe paint out on the back patio and listen to the birds chirp while you paint. Okay, so I'm just going to paint now. And I'm going to get started, and then we can talk a little about birds. And you just need to decide, how do you want your bird to look? Sometimes I have a plan, and sometimes I just start painting. And it's really fun to me to do that because you never quite know how it's going to turn out. And sometimes I'll go through and I'll paint all the red and I'll set it off to dry. And then I'll come back with another color. Okay, and now we need to paint 3 to 5 tail feathers. And again, you can paint them however you want. And I've already used red. So now I'm going to go back over some of the things I've painted with some yellow. And if your paint seems a little thick to spread, what I would do is just mix a little bit of water in it. I cut a little bit of a ledge down, as you can see. And I'm just going to come across there like that. And I'm going to paint the whole beak yellow. And if you switch brushes to a smaller brush, it's kind of fun because you get a different kind of line. So now I'm going to use some hot pink. So I'm just going to keep going here with some curvy lines. Now I'm going to wash my brush out and swish brushes. And I'm going to get some turquoise paint to use, and that lets me stir a little bit of water into the edge. So I'm just going to come above my yellow. It's almost like I'm making a pattern, so I know that everywhere there is a yellow, I'm going to go on the top side of it. So see, I'm just coming here with some white paint right on top of that red. Now see how that starts singing all of a sudden? And I could take my white and I could make some dots. I just want you to dream a little, and I want you to make the bird of your dreams, okay? And I want to tell you about a man named James Audubon. James Audubon, I'll spell his name for you, A-U-D-U-B-O-N. James Audubon lived from 1785 to 1851, and he was a wonderful artist. As a boy, he was born in Haiti, then he moved to France, and then his family immigrated to the United States. And James Audubon loved to sit out on their family farm in Pennsylvania and draw and paint birds. And he had many unique ways of studying birds, and he looked at how the birds' wings were made, and he looked at how their bodies were designed, and then he drew and painted what he saw. And again, he painted all kinds of animals too, not just birds, but he also opened a store as an adult. He didn't just start off painting for a living, but during his adult lifetime, there was a time period when he traveled around the United States and he drew birds that he saw all over the United States. Altogether, he drew 1,065 drawings and paintings of birds from the United States, from North America. And he put them in a book called Birds of America. A man named, now you're going to like this middle name. His name was George Bird Grinnell. His middle name was Bird. I don't know if that was his middle name or his nickname. But anyway, he started an organization called the National Audubon Society. And they named it after James Audubon because of all he had done for people that love to watch birds. I just painted my beak, and in a little bit I'm going to outline it with white and finish the eye. And I think I want some pink, much more colorful. Okay, so I think my bird is done, but I do want some white in the middle of this eye. I'm going to try to just get a little white in the middle of that eye. So there's my bird's face. Now, we're going to glue this together. So the first thing I'm going to do is kind of clean my surface off here, and I'm going to turn the body like this, and I'm going to put my head up here. But I think so it looks right to you, I'll do it like this so you can see the bird being built. I'm going to put the glue on the back side of the bird's head, and you need to let your big person do that. Someone in your family that's older than you, an older teenage brother or sister, or a family member or a friend, but an adult needs to do that. This is my wing, and it's going to go here, and I need to put glue all over the back of it. The more glue we use, the more likely it is to stay on. And now I have these tail feathers. Some of them I painted earlier, but I'm putting some hot glue down about 3 or 4 inches of my bird. And I'm just going to set my bird on top of that. So now we have this much of our bird. So what we're going to do now is we're going to put the legs on. But before we put the legs on, I want to show you what I do. So now that I have my bird's body all put together, I need to do the legs. And I painted the legs in 2 long pieces. They're about 1 inch wide. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off about 2.5 inches from the bottom of each one and set that off to the side for just a minute. And now I'm going to glue my bird's legs on it. So I'm going to get my glue gun and I'm going to squirt this glue on a couple inches of the top, and every now and then you run out of glue, so you get another glue stick, and there we go. There is a beautiful bird now. So we're going to use this little piece and I'm going to cut it in 3 long pieces. So I end up with what I'll call claws. So if you can see, I'm going to cut 1, I'll cut again, and that gives me 3 pieces. And this part isn't very hard. Let me make sure you can see what I'm doing. I'm just going to put some glue on there and I'm going to lay those on. 1, 2, and the third one is just going to come off to the side like that. And I want to turn that one out a little, so I need to let those dry a little bit. Okay, boys and girls, here's my big bird all finished. Now, I want to tell you a few things about birds. So I think it's really important that we take good care of our earth. That's called conservation. It's how we preserve and protect our world. 2.9 billion birds have disappeared since 1970. And we live on a world with, oh my goodness, how many billions of people live on our earth? 7 billion people live on our earth. And so it's really important that we learn how to take care of our birds. And I want to give you a few tips for taking care of birds. One of the first things we need to do is make our windows bird friendly. Birds fly into things that humans make. About 1 billion birds a year are killed from flying into windows. So we can put screens on our windows. We can break up the reflections on our windows with film, with paint, with stickers, with string. And we also need to try to turn out as many lights in the house as we can at night, because birds fly into the reflection at night. We also need to keep our cats inside as much as possible, and I think you know why. And we need to plant native species of plants. What that means is, when we go to the greenhouse and we buy plants that are from another part of the world and we plant them as annual flowers in our flower beds, they don't live here because they're not from our climate. So most of them don't live through the winter. Perennials, plants that live through the winter, that live all year, are good plants to plant for birds. But most importantly, we need to plant plants that grow naturally here in Arkansas, where we're from, because the birds that are here naturally, and they're looking for the plants that their instincts tell them they need. So we need to plant native species of plants in our yards. We also need to avoid pesticides if at all possible. We're using a lot of pesticides these days to kill insects so that we have better crops for people to use and consume. The problem is we kill a lot of the bugs that birds eat. But another problem is some of the pesticides kill birds. We need to drink coffee that is grown under shade trees. Let me explain that to you. If you look on a package of coffee, some of them, not a lot of them, but some of them say shade-grown coffee. And what that means is no forest was torn down or bulldozed down to grow coffee trees. And one reason that the bird population is shrinking is we're cutting down lots of our forests in all over the world. Another thing that we need to do is we need to reduce the use of plastic. This is especially important for seabirds, is you need to become a citizen scientist. And if we see things like dead birds in our yard or birds that look sick, we need to take pictures of it. And we need to find out someone at a university in our state that we can send those pictures to. Ornithologists are people that study birds. You can also, as kids, you can be a passionate advocate for birds. Stand up for the birds. So tell your family you want to put some bird feeders out in the backyard. You know, when my kids were little, we took pine cones and we smeared peanut butter on them and rolled them in birdseed and hung them with a ribbon in our tree. Buy a stamp called the Migratory Bird Hunting and Conservation Stamp. It's also called the duck stamp. And you can buy these at the post office. 98% goes to the National Wildlife Refuge System. So you buy those stamps and use them, and the money goes to help birds and other animals in our national wildlife refuges. So let's all help take care of the birds. And if you see a crazy bird like this outside somewhere, you might not want to let the scientists know. You might want to let an art teacher like me know.